Thank you, and everyone, thank you for joining us for today's social selling webinar, Fill Your Pipeline in 5 Easy Steps. We're excited to introduce you to Rob Neesig, who is our expert here at InsideView on social selling. As mentioned in the chat window, we will be live tweeting, so please connect with us using hashtag social selling or shout out directly to us with @InsideView. Before we begin, we would like to start with a poll. Which social networks are you using today to engage with your prospects? Choose as many as you want. We're going to go ahead and say, is it Twitter, is it LinkedIn, Facebook, others, is it Google Plus or something, or nothing yet? We see a lot coming in. About 70% of you have voted. Come on, don't be afraid to participate. We're seeing about 90% are using LinkedIn, which is obvious, probably in a very simple way to connect with their direct connections. But we're going to see how you can use your network connections. Why don't we go ahead and pose the poll and share those results with you? What do you think, Rob?
Well, it's interesting. Kind of expected to see a lot of LinkedIn here, and so I think one of the fun topics we'll be able to explore today is, how other social networks and other social platforms can really help you effectively learn about and engage with your customers and prospects. So without further ado, we'll start with a pretty obvious question, which is, what is social selling? And the way I see it, social selling is really using and sharing social content like blogs and social media to inform and guide your sales strategy. So it's not just about using LinkedIn or using Facebook as a method of communication with your customers and prospects, but really looking at the social sphere as a whole and considering factors like blogs, industry forums, and other social channels as a means to educate yourself about your prospects and really learn their situation so that you can engage more effectively and hopefully close more deals. So what's driving the social selling craze, or in other words, why should I care? And there's a number of reasons. The first being, with 1.5 billion social media users, it's really big. So there's a lot of opportunity out there. Also, 80% of online users regularly interact with social networks, which means that social is incredibly heavily used. So between those two combinations, it already seems pretty clear that social is kind of a big deal. But then when you consider that 50% of social media users are over the age of 35, you realize that social is multi-generational. So it's not just something that the kids are doing, but it's really something that everybody's becoming a part of. And as a result of that, it's gaining a lot of influence in the way that people think. As a matter of fact, 70% of B2B decision makers use social media sources as part of their decision-making process. So the majority of your decision makers are already on social, which really means that in order to effectively engage with them, we need to be on there as well. But perhaps most importantly, if any of those reasons weren't compelling enough, 67% of the buyer's journey is now completed digitally, as Serious Decisions found out and published in their report last year. This means that in a digital age, buyers are making most of their decisions before even engaging directly with your sales team. So social selling is a way to engage with those buyers before you can get them on the phone. It's about improving your mind share in a space and becoming a recognized and trusted advisor with a viable solution. So how do we get started? We've outlined 5 steps for social selling success that if you follow, you should be able to effectively use social to identify your prospects, find the right time to engage, use social to research your prospect accounts and gather the best insights, engage with the right person and the right message, and hopefully close your deal with success that's built on the information that you've discovered through the social media platforms. So the first step is to really start by defining your target. Remember, the scale of social is huge. There's over 288 million users on Twitter, over 360 million global users on LinkedIn, and over 1.4 billion users on Facebook. So just saying that you want to use social as a means to target your prospects isn't really good enough. There's a lot of opportunity, but the scale is just too large. So in order to cope with the vastness of the social field, you really need to narrow it down and define the list of targets that you want to go after. So some things to consider here are similar to in any sales process. What market are you selling to? What personas are you engaging? and where are your buyers really spending the majority of their time. Some good criteria to consider: geography, titles and roles for the folks that tend to buy your products and solutions, and who are the influencers and what industry forums are your buyers spending a lot of their time. Who do they trust already, and where do they go to find answers? And once you have that information, then you can use that to help identify who you should be engaging with and where you can find them. Once you have that sorted out, it's time to really start monitoring the space and learning more about how your prospects and your customers are spending their time online. What we're really looking for here are trigger events, which are recent, present, or pending actions taken by a prospect that often raise the relevance and timeliness of your offerings. So some examples of that would be a merger, an acquisition, leadership change, as well as a number of other different corporate events that can indicate that the time to buy your product or your service really is now. But again, remembering the scale and vastness of social media, it's really difficult to identify these trigger events across such a large ecosystem. So using automation in this process can really help make this more manageable. And by automation, we mean setting up alerts. Things like Google Alerts, or if you're an InsideView user, a Watchlist, can help you really become aware when an event is happening in the social sphere and allow you to track that event as it progresses. Some great places to look for these trigger events can be news and financial sources, company blogs and websites, and social and professional media. So consider things like LinkedIn groups, where people are going to trade information and learn about best practices in their field. Other examples are forums for complementary products like your CRM or marketing automation solution if you sell a complementary product or service, as well as user groups for other applications that your customers and prospects are using. Once you've identified a trigger event, then it's really time to start your research. You need accurate, relevant, and current information before you can engage with a prospect effectively. And the other thing important here is that it's really necessary to have more than one touch point available. You need to become an expert in your prospect industry. It's important to know their competitors incredibly well, and it's important to review the company's social media. What you want to look for here are things like industry trends and challenges so that you can have a relevant conversation about what your product or service can do for your prospect. It's important to know key developments like a new player in the space or new regulations that govern the industry so that you can speak effectively about how you can really serve your prospect's needs. It's also important to know what competition is going on in the space so that you can speak effectively about what strengths your product or service has over those. And you need to know what's going on with that company in particular. And social media can really help you do that because we've noticed that news tends to break on things like Twitter much more quickly than it will go through a blog or especially an industry publication. So monitoring a company's social media can really give you a heads up as to what's going on truly in real time. So once you know about your prospect and you know the avenue with which you want to engage, then it's really important to identify who you need to talk to within that organization. And the first place to start is with your own connections. You probably know more people on social than you think you do. And you should think about this outside of the context of just your LinkedIn connections or who you know on Facebook. But social can really extend to things like university affiliations, people that you went to school with, people that you worked for in previous organizations or worked with, as well as the personal and professional connections that you've gathered over time. So when you consider all of those avenues together, your own social network really can be quite vast. But then when you connect that with who your coworkers know, your reach can exponentially increase because you don't just have the wealth of connections from one individual, but now when you work as a team, you really can identify a connection when you really didn't think it was possible. So start thinking about how you can get an introduction, how you can leverage your own network, and then how you can leverage the network of your peers and colleagues in order to connect with your prospect and get a warm introduction. And in case you don't believe me, just consider a few of these facts about why connections can exist. Social is the #1 activity on the web. which means already that if you're on social, your chances of connecting with a prospect or a customer are pretty good. But then when you consider that age 45 to 54 is the fastest growing demographic on Google Plus and Facebook, you know that it's really not just for kids anymore. The decision makers that you're trying to reach are there because social is really becoming a universal platform and a great way to engage with your prospective buyers. Not only do connections exist, but these connections really matter. They can mean the difference between your success and failure in a sales cycle. Research tells us that about 92% of executives don't respond to generic email blasts and cold calls. However, a recommendation from someone inside an organization will usually always secure a meeting, and this is coming to us from selling the C-suite. What this information really means is that the connection or the power of connections is real. Referrals are a way to change the paradigm in the sales process and really allow you to succeed where otherwise it would have been impossible to get an executive on the phone. The final step in the process, of course, is to really capitalize on the information that you've, at this point, painstakingly gathered and researched. Untailored sales pitches decrease the chance of winning a deal by 45%. And remember that with 67% of the buying decision already made, your prospects don't want to hear about what you do. They want to hear about what you can do for them. And social media is really a way for you to find out what's relevant for your prospects so that you're more prepared when it comes time to have a conversation. So we've covered a good amount of ground in terms of what social media can do for you and how you can use it to research your prospects and customers. So now I just want to cover off on how you can really get started with social. So the first thing, of course, is to create accounts. You need to be where your prospects and customers are hanging out. So it looks like the majority of you are already on LinkedIn, but consider other avenues like what forums people are using, what user groups people are attending, and what other products and services have online presence where you can really start to create an ecosphere. So you'd want to get registered with all of those different services so that you can be a part of that conversation. The next step is to build your profile. So just being present isn't enough. You need to be really a credible resource for your prospects in order to provide value and to contribute to the conversation. So build out your profile with not just information about yourself, but thought leadership and things that establish your credibility as an expert in the space. And once you have that, then it's really just your job to be active, to maintain your presence and to continue to build your credibility over time. And then as a final piece of advice, don't be creepy. This one seems really obvious, but social is a really fine line. It's where we don't just spend our time professionally, but personally as well. And so it's important to realize that while social can be a fantastic tool for understanding your prospect, it's really easy for a little bit of abuse. So just exercise caution and discretion as you start to engage and use social as a means to build out your knowledge base. So of course, there's an obligatory commercial here as well. And that really is that InsideView can be a fantastic tool to help you get started with social media and monitor your social sales process. So we want to invite you today to start a free trial with InsideView. And with InsideView, you can use it to get quality prospects and build targeted lists through your social connections. You can use it to engage with real-time intelligence by adding individuals to Watchlist and automating the piece of monitoring that we were talking about. And you can also use InsideView to build a map of your connections and relationships. So that part where we were talking about how you can leverage not just who you know and where you had experiences, but you can connect that up with other professionals that you work with, and InsideView really helps you to do that. And then finally, you can access everything from anywhere at any time. So with all that out of the way, I'd love to answer some of the questions that we've had as this presentation moves on.
Great, thank you so much. A lot of people are asking for the slide deck. I'm wondering if they're looking to influence their colleagues inside the business or maybe the people who they're reporting up into in the executive team. So to everyone, we will automatically send a follow-up email. You're going to get a link to the slide deck as well as the recording. The event is being recorded, so if there's also some key positioning or words that Rob used that you think that will help you, we can use that. You can use that as well. And we also have a social selling ebook. So for those people who wanted the next level down on really how to get started and how to leverage these different channels, we're going to include that. So off of that, so there's a few questions that came in that are wondering about global stats and numbers. Is what you're talking about focused on the U.S., or can you talk about engaging socially to sell?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we looked at the total social numbers at the beginning of this presentation, those are looking at global user counts across different services. But the United States is also incredibly active on social. A little over 300 million monthly active LinkedIn users come from the United States alone. The number for Twitter is, I think, somewhere around the 200 million monthly active mark from the U.S. So even if you're not just looking at total number of registrations or total number of global participants, the conversation on social in North America is incredibly strong as well.
I think they were more interested in other regions, beyond North America.
Oh, sure. Sorry, I misunderstood the question. Unfortunately, I don't have data on what social looks like sort of outside the U.S. beyond that sort of global perspective that we looked at the beginning of the presentation.
Okay, great. Maybe we can look into that a little bit. A question came in that's related, sort of peer-to-peer engaging via social, but how do you use social media when you want to target the C-level business prospects? It's even harder to get their attention via a phone call, via an email, and so now you're trying to use social to engage with them. How productive is that?
As always, your mileage will vary, but there are a number of different techniques and tricks that you can use to engage the C-level through social media. The first and probably most fundamental is just to establish your base of credibility in that industry or in that business line by providing thought leadership and posting opinions that talk about the trends and challenges that have to do with their particular industry. But beyond just establishing that baseline level of credibility, you can also use social media as a way to identify connections into that executive. So whether you're able to find a prior connection from your personal life, or whether you can use it to identify how your colleagues connect to that individual. For example, one of your own executives may know them, and that's another fantastic tool. There's also a kind of a cool example that we have from using social selling. One of our customers had set an alert on InsideView to see what was going on in the social sphere. And they were able to see an alert right before they walked into the meeting, and then were able to comment on that particular social post from the executive during the meeting, and as a result of that, able to secure about $100,000 worth of business because they were able to demonstrate that they were paying attention, that they understood the needs of that business, and they understood what was going on right now, and then they were able to show how our product was able to impact what they were doing in a really meaningful way. So I think that's really the best example. It's just a way to stay informed, to be credible, and then to be relevant when you're having the conversation face to face.
So with all of the noise on Twitter, specifically for B2B sales, like how do you, aside from kind of keeping the beat and a view on what's going on with the company, it all seems overwhelming to manage. You've got all this information, and if you're targeting it by industries and you have a top 10, top 20, top 100 accounts that you're going after and you're looking to close, what are some best practices in managing all of that noise?
Sure. So the first, I think, is really to know exactly what you're going after. Remember, with the vastness of social, it's really easy to become distracted. And so having as narrow a target as possible can really help you to focus and then develop a strategy that's going to work specifically for you. I would recommend next, after that, pursuing the social topics that are really incredibly relevant to that. So identifying the groups that have the most conversation and chatter around your particular subject, and identifying a few top industry blogs or top companies to follow in social can really help you get a beat on the pace of the industry and the pace of progression so that you can then engage in a very relevant and contextual fashion.
Okay, great. though we mostly focused on sales for this invitation because it was about social selling, is a good question from one of our folks who were attending, who's in marketing. They wanted a social selling just for sales. Like, are they using it alone to approach their target?
Social selling can be incredibly effective on the sales side, but I think it really works for marketing as well. Social is incredibly universal, as we've discovered through the numbers. And so there's a lot of opportunity to influence somebody on social as they're in the marketing pipeline as well. While it may not be a direct one-to-one relationship like it would be for a seller going after a particular prospect, companies can have a social media presence. And then you can also build targeted lists based on who your company knows. And that's a feature that InsideView can help you out with as well. So I think when you're on the marketing team, it's great to be thinking about that. You want to be thinking about what sort of posts you can use to make your company an industry leader. And then also consider, as you're designing campaigns and prioritizing leads, what does your sales team network look like, and how would they be able to use social and their connections in order to really make progress in particular accounts versus others.
Excellent. Here's a question about YouTube. What role does YouTube play, as you see, or from the research that you've done, with regards to the social media mix?
Interesting question. As we know, video is becoming an increasingly popular medium for communication as well as just for entertainment. And so publishing videos can go a long way towards improving your social presence. Everybody loves to watch a film, and so using videos as part of your sales process, either from an informative standpoint or just to kind of set the mood a little bit, can really help. And so YouTube is a fantastic way to share that information and, again, to sort of establish your reputation and credibility. But it's also a great place to start a conversation as well. If a prospect threw out a great video, comment on that, like that, or follow their YouTube channel, and it's another way to just sort of engage in the social media and start a conversation with the folks you want to reach.
Okay, excellent. Besides this presentation, are there other specific people or websites or destinations that these folks can follow or turn to continue their education about social selling and help you?
Yeah, absolutely. Social selling is becoming an incredibly popular topic, and so there are a number of sites and individuals that you can follow to learn more about this as well. First off, the Social Selling University is a great resource for presentations, ebooks, and other information on how to get started with social selling and how to build your own social selling strategy. I also really like a lot of the work that Barb Giammanco is doing in the social selling space, and you can find her at barbgiammanco.com or also on LinkedIn. And Nancy Narden, author of Smart Selling Tools, is another great social selling resource. So there's a few. We can also publish or tweet some of our other favorite social recommendations for you to follow up with after the presentation.
Great, and for those who are interested, we are talking with Barb about doing another online event in the fall, so look for that, and we'll let you know when we nail that down, and we'll get some good sophisticated information for you, so as you get your legs underneath you, it'll be good for her to provide that next level of direction and feedback. We do have a question coming from Twitter, and it's, what is the best practice regarding the amount of content posted on social media each week? Interesting.
So I'm not sure if I have like a best practice in terms of you should put out 2 pieces of content or 3 pieces of content a week. I think it really depends on the quality of the content and the value that you're contributing by publishing it. If you're just throwing things out there, then the quantity doesn't matter. But if you're publishing on a regular basis, whatever regular cadence makes sense for you, and it's information that's contextual, that's relevant, and that's considered, and can really help start and drive a conversation, then that's what I think you really want to pay attention to and what you want to strive for.
A lot of good questions coming in. Let's see if I can. So there's a lot of different platforms out there. When it's specific to InsideView for sales, how do you compare platforms like First Ring, First Research, Google Alerts? Are you able to tag alerts on any prospects and on any account?
For Google Alerts specifically, or
I think how do you compare 2 platforms? So how does InsideView manage alerts on products and accounts? Like how are you able to tag them and how that is inform your day?
Sure, absolutely. So InsideView is pretty fun because we have a piece of functionality that we call a Watchlist. And that basically works as an automated monitoring service for you, so that when something interesting happens, InsideView will alert you via email. And the way that you build Watchlists is as you identify companies or contacts that you want to talk to, you can simply add them to a Watchlist, and with InsideView Enterprise, you get 5 different ones. So you add them to the watch list that's relevant to them. Maybe it's prospects, maybe it's customers, maybe it's just targeted accounts that you want to go after. And then as things develop in their business, if there's an interesting social post or if there is activity on a particular news channel that you wanted to see, then InsideView will send you a summary email to let you know, hey, this is what happened in these accounts for the week or for the day. And it's a great way to know that it's time to try and start a conversation or do a little bit more research with that particular individual or with that account.
Okay. We're running tight on time, so why don't we try and do one last one. I'm going to combine 2 questions. So one person says, they're only not using LinkedIn today, and so they're kind of new to all this, and how do they incorporate it into their selling strategy? And then how do they go about finding industry blogs? I think you brought up a good couple of places for them to go, but how do they uncover specific potential prospects? So not just they have their list of customers, but if they are outbounding and they're looking to target someone new, can you use it for discoverability as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to answer this question in 2 parts, actually. The first is just sort of general approach. So you can absolutely use social to identify new prospects. You can do that by just seeing who's posting on particular LinkedIn groups that are relevant to your industry. A quick Google search for blogs within your industry will probably reveal the top 3 or 4 industry publications, and so check out who's commenting on those, who's writing some of those publications or some of those articles. And that's a great way to understand sort of who's in the space, who the influencers are, and then also who the users are that are paying attention to that content. And so that's one way to find a prospect list. The second part of the answer is if you use InsideView, then you can actually use our list building tool to create a list of targeted prospects based on industry, based on geography, or based on a level of connection to your organization, whether that's a personal connection on LinkedIn or Facebook, or whether it's somebody that somebody else in your organization had gone to school with or worked with in another life.
Excellent. Thanks, Rob. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Record attendance, and we appreciate it. We will follow up in the next day with links to the recording. We'll include the slide deck for you, and of course the ebook, as we mentioned before. If you have any questions, keep sending them over, and we'll do our best to respond to you offline. So thank you so much, and have a wonderful day.